Alright, so welcome to the first lecture for NX10 for MEC 1305. I say lecture, but really it's more of a guide for you guys in case you have any questions. So in this case, we're just going to be covering basic UI, what all of this means, how to make a few 2D shapes, how to do some dimensions, and we'll briefly touch over viewing the different view options. Okay, so whenever you first open up NX10, you'll see this UI. Okay, over here on the left, it'll show you recent file parts that you had open, so you can just open these up and it'll pop up. Okay, for my case, it's all of the other quizzes that you guys have already submitted. So another way that you can open up files is you can go to Open. Then I have some in Downloads already. Downloads, and then you have all of these. Okay, and another way you can do it is, I already have it prepared, but let's go ahead and just go to this PC. Then I save some in my Downloads. Then if I just want to open up this engine block, I would just double click that and it would open up right here. Okay? Now, for our case, we're just going to be opening a brand new file, so we'll be starting from scratch. So to do that, you just hit new right here. Give it a moment. Now, this part is one of the most important steps. So right here, when you're selecting units, you need to know specifically which one you're going to be using, either millimeters or inches, okay? Because there isn't a way to go back. As far as this class is concerned, we'll always tell you what units it's in, okay? Just because we don't want an issue where you get so far and then you have to go back because you have to redo. So it'll always be defined for you. The only case where it wouldn't be is if I'm just trying to show tools or whatever and I just click, 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 and because it doesn't matter. It's more theory than making an exact shape, okay? So for this one, we'll just do millimeters. Name. This is important, so you always want to rename it here, okay? So don't save it to your desktop and then rename afterwards, because NX will get confused whenever you're doing assemblies, and then it's a whole thing. So really, we also give you the file names, so just go ahead and start that way. I'm just going to put lecture 1 Welsh Zachary, and that's how you should be doing it all the time. So the type of file it is, so we'll give you the basic file name, your last name, your first name. I also ask that you put the underscores, okay? The underscores make it a lot easier because then it organizes the files. So it's just one underscore, right? So you just have to figure out where that is on your keyboard. Don't worry about folder, about where you can save, because 9 times out of 10 you'll have to redo that part anyways. So then you just do OK, give it a moment, boom, we're in NX, okay? Now, a lot of this, don't worry about, all right? This is more when you finally have a 3D shape. For this beginning section, we're just going to be touching 2D objects. Okay, so the first thing you do is right over here where it says sketch, you click that. You don't want to just click these. Alright, if you click sketch, you actually get the options. If you do these, it'll end up messing up. So just trust me, double click sketch. Now, mine's went fat, so you see how it rotated? That's because we're just going to be inferring the planes, okay? So you see how this is Y, X, and then Z is popping outwards, so it's popping out at you. I have a mouse, so I'm going to be clicking my middle click, so usually where your scroll wheel is. So if you click and hold, you can rotate the axis. So this just moves the camera around, okay? So this is just to show you that we're drawing on the XY plane, and Z will be pointing out at us, okay? Now, if you don't have a mouse, you're going to have to be using rotate and all these. So I really highly recommend you use a mouse. So I'm just going to do inferred, and that'll even us back out. Now, basic sketches. All your 2D tools will be right here. So these ones right here are just for making just, you know, any sort of shape. So this first one is profile. What profile is it's just going continuous lines. Okay? So each of these lines go together. Now, you see how I started making that and I get all of these gray parts. So the gray things are things that you need to get rid of immediately. Alright? Because you see how I have all of these? It's going to cause an issue later on whenever I'm having to dimension stuff. So what you do is that you'll go to more, and right here, continuous auto dimensioning. If it's not right there and you're recently used, it'll be down here at sketch tools. So all you have to do is click that and it should be gone. You can see because it's not highlighted with this green little box anymore. But these gray ones are still there. That means I have to go in and delete each one manually. Now for this basic sketch, there isn't that too many. But if you don't catch it and it keeps going on further and further, it just snowballs into this huge mess that you have to clean up. So what I would recommend is if you started making a basic shape and you notice you have continuous auto dimensioning, just go ahead and erase it and start over. Now I'm going to press Control Z. That's just like how you would do anything else on your computer. So Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. But when you Control Z, it turns continuous auto dimensioning back on. It takes that as one of the inputs. So you'll have to go ahead and click that. So make that a habit of being your first step of going into more and turning off continuous auto dimension. Remember, if it's off if it doesn't have any sort of box around it. This yellow box is just to select. So don't confuse that with this green one that shows that it's active. So there's no box around it, so we can go ahead and remake the shape. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to make another profile. Okay. Now, I will cover later on what these lines mean when we do constraints. But for now, don't worry about it. We're just making shapes. So that's just the line profile tool. The next one is the arcs. So you click one point to be one end of the arc. You keep going to determine where your other point is going to be. So let's put it there. And now you move your mouse to make the actual arc. These are pretty basic, but they're very powerful tools for when you go on. You can already see that NX is trying to put some constraints on, but like I said, we'll cover that later. So that's arcs. I got rid of it by hitting Control Z. Now this tool right here is just to make rectangles. There's 3 different ways to do it. You can choose whichever one you pick you want to do it, right? I don't usually use the rectangle tool unless I have to, but you know, NX is supposed to offer all these separate tools in order to make lives easier for you. So the first one is just selecting 2 points, so you select the bottom left, and then you can just move around, or bottom right, you know, because you can change it. If I move over here, it goes out. That one's pretty basic. The next one is by setting 2 points, so I set one edge, another edge, and then I expand out the rectangle. I pressed escape, and escape deleted it. If you want it to stay, you'll click again. This one I think is a little more complicated. You start from the center, you move out, and then you make the rest of the rectangle. So you see how it's going out symmetrically. The next is just lines. So this one we've already covered. The way that I panned like that is that I middle clicked and right clicked at the same time. If you don't have a mouse, you'll have to go over here to pan and do that, or just learn the shortcuts. All right. I think that middle clicking and right clicking at the same time is much better. So I'm going to pan over to get that out of frame. Now for this one, that's just basic lines, you know. Notice how these don't connect automatically, it just makes lines. Now, to get rid of this little menu, and you'll do this for anything else, you just press escape, and now there's nothing on there, so you're back at a neutral sort of cursor. Next is arc. There are 2 other specific arcs. This is different from the profile because they don't connect. So this one, the same as the that we saw from the profile, it's just that this won't connect to other lines. Okay. Here is slightly different, so you select one edge, you select the other, and now you sort of go around in a little circle. Let's make a little Pac-Man. But you know, the lines aren't connected, so I'm just gonna finish it off. Now, you see how when I'm connecting these lines, this little section lights up right there? That means it's going to connect there. They are now constrained, so this line goes to that line. So I want it to touch here, so I wait until it highlights that point. If I go any further, then that means they're not constrained to each other. And there we go. Now we got the little Pac-Man. Okay? And that's pretty much the basic tools. I really recommend going through these and playing with them a little bit. There are other ones that are a little more advanced. I mean, I say advanced, but really it's just a little trimmings and stuff like that. What I want you to do now is just become familiar with making the basic shapes, so that way that's not an issue for you. All right? Now, we have these shapes. The next thing that you need to know is how to dimension them. So dimension them is pretty much just putting how the actual dimensions of each line. What I would always recommend for NX is hit D, so the letter D as in dog, and let me go into the menu, hit D, and now you're in rapid dimension. Okay, so rapid dimension is where NX tries to be smart and tries to figure out what you want just by what you click. So you see how almost all of these turn the sort of brown color and a few of them changed green. That means the green ones already have a hidden dimension to it, right? Or no, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. These other ones have something already locked in. So what these have are these constraints that are put in. These have these 90-degree angles. This is a connected surface, stuff like that. Okay? Really, we should be able to fully manipulate it though. So you see this little menu, how it says select first object, select second object. Rapid dimension usually is pretty smart, so you can just immediately press one object, and it'll what it's saying, what you're saying to the rapid dimension by clicking that is that I select this line, so my first point is going to be right there, my second point is going to be right there. Now you'll notice as I move my cursor, this little UI is moving around too. All this is a little graphic to indicate the actual dimensions. So if I stick it out in whichever way, so if I go vertically, then it's the vertical distance. If I go at an angle, it's this angle distance. If I go, let me try to get it like that, yeah, or this way. Now I have this other distance, stuff like that. And once you click it, you can't really move it. So I recommend just fiddling with it to get it where you want. That one's 68. So remember, we're in millimeters, so this is 68 millimeters. So you can move this around. Again, this doesn't interfere with any of the objects. It's just a graphic. To change it, you double click, double highlight this, and then you just change the number. So I'm going to go to 60, and you see it shrink. 50, and then 75. You can also do this for angles. So I select one line, and then I select this line. Now you see how I have an angle one. And it's over constrained because I have this. Let me delete this little, these dimensions, these little constraints that I have in here. Now I can change this. So the angle works the same way. So 90, let's make it 60, and it changes. And it tries to keep everything else in line. If you want to get to the specific dimensions, all you have to do is over here where it says rapid dimension, you click this and you can see all the different ones. So there's linear, radial, angular, perimeter. So radial is for like circle type things. So if I click this, see how it goes around? I can now change it. Now this one, it's interesting because it's actually a diameter. Okay? The reason it's a diameter is because this is pretty much already fully closed. So if I click this, the way you can let me do one other thing. And then let me go a radial dimension for this one. Now, you see the difference between these two? This one has, I should have zoomed out. So this one has that little circle, and this one says R. The R is for radius. The little circle with the line is for diameter. Okay? And those change the exact same way as you would expect. Change the number, it grows, da-da-da-da-da. Last is just basic views. Now we're in 2D, so it won't really work too well for us. We have a couple of 3D shapes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make them 3D. We'll cover how to do that later. I just want to use it as a demonstration. So I'm going to make these two completed shapes 3D. Let's make it a bit thicker, so that way you can actually tell. So now I have this 3D shape. You can see if I move around, yeah, 3D. Let's go back. Now, views are for this part right here. So this is all of the different views. I click that, I go in isometric. It's pretty much, you click any of these, you get a different view. Normally you'll be in top view. You can play around with that. That's not too big. Another thing I want to cover before the time runs out for this video is fit. Now I have a lot of stuff around here, right? Let me go back to a top view. Let me pan. I have a lot of things on here already. I've made a lot of stuff. So if I want to make sure everything's back in frame, this little box right here, so this little blue box with the red chevrons, if you click that, it'll fit everything back into frame. So that's going to be a very useful tool later on when you make other stuff. In case some of you guys, let's do a little problem solving, in case some of you guys have an issue where your 3D shapes aren't fully 3D, it's probably in here. So this changes how your 3D shapes look, right? So just stick shaded with edges and you should be fine. Okay, and that'll go ahead and conclude lecture 1. So I'll go ahead and upload lecture 2, and that will cover more of the NX tools that you'll be using. Okay, go ahead and leave anything in the comments if you have a question, and I'll try to respond back to them and ask questions in class or send emails. You know how to get in contact. Just any issues you might have, feel free to ask. Okay.